to this episode. Today we're going to go through the entire process of how to buy crypto, what is crypto, and the entire thing. And today I have with me my mom. She doesn't know anything about crypto, and I want to help her to get started with having some crypto, at least understanding what crypto is, looking at the different types of crypto, and how to buy crypto, how to keep crypto, and all the 101 questions. So I'm going to go through the entire process. She's going to ask a lot of questions, which is fantastic because I wish I had someone to ask long time ago, and I didn't have anyone to ask. So now she's going to ask all the different questions, and there's no such thing as stupid question. Every question is valid. It's only stupid answers. So if I don't answer properly, it's my fault. So today, let's get started with understanding crypto and what to expect. We're gonna first look at what is crypto. And do you want to first learn about the types of crypto out there, or do you want to first learn about the technology behind crypto and why all these things matter?
I would like to know what type of the crypto that I am going to invest. So from there, I can explore more.
Okay, so we start with the types of crypto.
Sure.
So when we have crypto itself is just like a type of asset, right? So think of it like gold, silver, these kind of minerals, correct? So they are different. In general, they are the same thing because they are, natural resources, but they are also very different on its own because they are a different asset on its own. So in crypto, we will divide them into, let's look at the type of crypto there are. So the first one is the layer 1. And then we have layer 2. And then we have applications. So layer 1 is, think of layer 1 like a phone, like Apple iPhone, right? Apple iPhone run this thing called iOS. That's why you have to update iOS all the time. So that's that. And then layer 2, we don't talk about this first. Let's pretend this doesn't exist because this just adds unnecessary complications. So we just look at applications. Application will be like your Facebook app, your WhatsApp app. So these are the apps that run on iOS, right? So you have a different type of phone, which is your Samsung phone. And this runs, what do they run?
Android.
And on Android, you can also run different types of applications. There's some applications that you can only find on Android. There's some applications you can only find on iOS, and then sometimes they're all the same. So maybe there's an Android-specific application. Or you can also have Facebook applications, right? So this is all technology, right? But they are quite different because this is the underlying main technology of the phone. This is the application technology.
It's like a programming.
Program, correct. So in crypto, you also have something similar. In crypto, instead of your iOS, you have iOS, and then you have so for example, for iOS, you have this thing called Bitcoin. And then you have your applications. And you have your different types of applications. So another form of iOS, the Android, will be Ethereum. Yeah, so it's a different thing. So this is the iOS, it's the Android in general. They're phones, but they run different kind of stuff. So this is where it can get a bit confusing. For Bitcoin, the application is just called Bitcoin.
Okay.
But you have different types of stuff. So this is Bitcoin, like the pure Bitcoin. Then you have things like Bitcoin Cash. You have things like Bitcoin Gold. This is basically WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But these are the different things that can run on Bitcoin. The Bitcoin phone. And then for Android, you have on Ethereum, you have stuff like Ether, ETH. So you have stuff like DAI, DAI. You have stuff like USDC. So these are different kind of the apps that run on Ethereum. And they don't exactly cross each other. You can cross, but it's a different story. And you have different kind of technology to cross it. Does this make sense first?
Yeah.
Okay, so
we are trying to understand the Bitcoin, the concept here and the concepts. They are the mirror image of each other. It's only on different software.
Something like that. So they are not exactly the same. They run on different software and they have different purpose. So Bitcoin or all these Bitcoin stuff, usually they call it P2P payment. That means peer-to-peer payment. The whole point of them existing is for me to pay you and for you to pay me. Whereas on Ethereum, it can be more complicated. So it can be for like investing. It can be for finance stuff. It can be for art. It can be for a lot of different things. So this is just a small little... Okay, first, do you have any questions on this first?
No. I'm good.
Okay. And this is just some aspects. You have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, you have a lot of other stuff. You have things like... Thorchain. You have things like...
What is Thorchain?
Polkadot. Different types of iOS and Android.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you have a lot of them. You have Stellar, you have like a million of them around.
But how to choose the so-called the best software that we are using?
Correct. So this is where the question comes in. iOS and Android, which is better? It really depends, right? You can't say that, oh, my iPhone is better than your Samsung phone. Because it really depends. Maybe Samsung phone is good, Android is good because sometimes, or it used to be cheaper. In the past, it also, and right now, you can customize a little bit more. Whereas iPhone is easy to use, which is good, but you can't do a lot of customization. So all of them are different in their own ways. So they have one of the main difference between all of them. So you also have Cardano. You have way too many of these. And remember, this is the layer 1, right? Layer 1. And then this is the application. Yeah. We call this DApp, D-A-P-P, because it's decentralized application. So these are the different things. Now, very, very good question. In fact, that's one of the main question that a lot of projects come to me and ask, okay, I've got this idea. Which of these do I choose? Because they have no idea. The thing is, it's the same thing as iPhone and Android. What do you choose? There is no such thing as better. You have to choose which of these serve your purpose. So the difference, so when we go back to layer 1, we look at differences. We look at things like consensus, mechanism. So consensus mechanism means how do I agree? Which is very important. We'll go back to this later. Let's look at 3 differences. The second thing is the transaction speed vs security. And the third thing is, will be, let's say, how many people using it?
Popularity?
Yeah, popularity. So this one, we call them network effects. So how do we choose between one of this? We break this down. Because this will be quite important as well to understand why the value of this will even increase in the first place. Okay?
Because of the demand.
Because of the demand, correct. And this is basically how you determine the demand of it. So let's go step by step, okay? So we have, number 1 is consensus mechanism. which I say, how do I agree? Correct? Okay, so firstly, this crypto thing, everyone thinks it's all like a scam and everything. There's a lot of technology behind that people don't understand. One of the main thing is consensus. So in accounting, you have your SAP and your different software, right? And if I say that this is my invoice, and I will invoice you $60,000 US, and then everyone agrees within the company that, oh, we will have additional $60,000. And if my system says that it's $60,000, then it's $60,000, right? If someone comes in, let's say I'm a bad person, and I say, oh, I want to invoice the customer $60 million, and then I just go and edit that, and the customers also didn't check whatever everybody says yes, and then suddenly this becomes the truth. But this is wrong, right? So one of the things about crypto is this thing where everyone has to agree that it's 60,000. So this is what this one invoice alone. So let's say this SAP thing, right? We call this centralized. So it's a centralized database.
All right. Integrated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, the key difference with crypto is that you have my invoice here. I have the same damn invoice in a few people's like account. Correct. So think of if this is one invoice for company ABC in the company ABC's SAP, then for the other, imagine instead of a company having one SAP to keep all of this, every employee has to keep the invoice. So every time I issue an invoice, and then let's say our company has 3 people, right? Like me, you, and Dad.
So this is on a different position or different entity?
So all 3 of us are in the same company.
Okay.
And then every time I issue an invoice to a customer, which is 60K
USD.
Yep. Then I will tell you that it's also 60K. I'll tell you it's 60K. So we all agree that it's 60K. Then I send this invoice to my customer. Then when we get money, we can, whatever. That means when all of us agree 60K, before I send it out, I cannot change it to 60 million. Right? Because then my invoice will be different from the rest of the people. Correct?
But in the first place, it's not compliance if let's say you just change to 60
million. So your compliance is only within the company, right?
Right.
Yeah. So imagine this is a bit like the entire world. And you, me, that we live in 3 different countries, in 3 different kind of companies. And then there's no compliance making sure that all of us will agree it's 60 million. But we can all agree that it's 60K because there's compliance in the company. So now what if we can make a global compliance? So this is where we have this thing called decentralized database. What do I mean? It means that instead of a centralized SAP that say it's 60K, not 60 million, every one of us, every time I send an invoice, we all agree it's 60K. I cannot just go and change and edit to 60 million and then I go and profit the rest of the money. And if I change this, what we will do, we will check with the rest of them. How come you have 60 million, but both of us agree 60,000? Where's the extra money coming from? And why do you cheat, right? So this is one of the key technological change in that
the traditional to the
new technology. Correct. So we go from centralized to decentralized. So centralized database, you have compliance, which I call them the rules, correct? The rules in the company. In decentralized database, we also have the rules, but we have the rules in the technology. If you want to use my technology, you must follow the rules. So this in general, this is one of the biggest change. And now we go back to the main thing, consensus mechanism. How do I agree? We have 3 people here. if I say, okay, 60K, I want to be bad, and I say it's 60 million. Then I tell Dad, can you change to 60 million as well? And then I give you some money, or I will share some profits with you, so you change to 60 million. Now it's your word against both of us. So who is correct in this case?
I will refer to the previous record.
Yeah, but we edit the record. We go into the computer and we edit the record. So I change to 60 million, Dad also changed to 60 million. So it's now your word against two people. So in this kind of situation, usually it's the majority that wins, right? So then suddenly your information is wrong. So this is one of the problems. This is one of the problems when we move from centralized to decentralized technology. So this thing itself, we call them consensus mechanism. So consensus means agreement.
Agreed by all parties.
Correct. So what are the different mechanisms? What are the different rules? These rules again in the technology for everyone to agree on something. So this becomes key when we go back to the different layer one, which is this one, the Android iOS things. They are all pretty much the same kind of concept of database, but they run the database differently. They have different consensus mechanism. They have different types of database. You have SAP database. You have, all the other kind of database out there. So that is the main difference. Okay, so number one, it's the consensus mechanism. How do you agree? This is very important because sometimes the consensus mechanism is very lousy, very, very nonsensical, and people don't use the system because it doesn't make sense.
So in this scenario, that the correct amount is 60,000 rather than 60 million. So in this scenario, how can justify, or how can I clarify that what is the correct amount? Let's say the third party come in, or there's a audit finding or whatever.
Yeah. So these rules, there are a lot of different ways to do it. One of the ways could be something like, every time we want to be one of these people who verify the invoice, right? Before we become a verifier of this, we have to deposit $10,000. If I deposit $10,000, then I can be verifying all these invoices. Okay, step one. Step one, I have to deposit. So if I find out that somehow I'm a bad actor, that I changed the money, then this $10,000 is gone. It's a fine.
But if let's say versus 10,000 and 60 million, what is the 10,000 for? So
no, this doesn't have to be 60 million. This could be $6,000, and you change the $6,000 to $9,000. So let's not look at the sum of money. Let's look at the concept. Okay. So one concept is to put deposit, so that if we find out that you're a bad person, if you misbehave, then I'll take your deposit away. Because I can't find you, because this is a decentralized place. Everyone's going to be all over the world. So before you come I can't find you after you do something bad. But before you do anything, I will make sure you have a deposit. If you have a deposit, then you can be one of these, invoice people. Now, why would anyone pay money to become one of these invoice people then? Why?
Because they want to cheat for the bigger amount.
How?
Look, like from the 60K to the 60 million, I just had to put in another 10K.
Mm-hmm.
So I put in a 10K, I can change the quantity, I can revise the amount, and if ultimately it is successful, 60 million versus this is nothing. Okay, so let's put the deposit as much higher. If price is something, let's say deposit is $100 million or 100 million tokens. Okay, and now it's not worth it to want to cheat anyway. Correct.
So why would people still put the deposit of 100 million down? Why? 100 million is our rules to make sure people don't misbehave, right?
No cheating.
Correct. But why would anyone still put 100 million down? If I'm not going to cheat anyway, then 100 million is not going to, like 100 million, I can't even use it in anywhere. Why would I put it down as deposit and be one of these people to be the invoice checker?
So with this rule, nobody will do cheating.
Correct. And one way, so 100 million is money, right? I can either put as deposit to become the invoice checker, or I can invest it somewhere else. The reason how we incentivize people, how we encourage people to be the invoice checker, more people being an invoice checker, less chances of this kind of stuff, right? So one way to get more people to be invoice checker is that every time this invoice is processed, right? Every time you check and process the invoice, you have this thing called transaction fees. Every time we pay with MasterCard or Visa, you have to pay transaction fees, right? How many percent, I don't know. So the same thing, you have to pay transaction fees every time you process the invoice. So in Bitcoin, every time I send Bitcoin from me to you, I'm processing a transaction, right? The Bitcoin invoice checker behind, this thing, every time it's being processed, you have to pay transaction fees.
Admin fee?
Something like admin fee. So let's say the admin fee is $2,000. And this $2,000 will, depending on whatever the system is, will be given to these checkers. And so it makes sense for you to want to be one of these checkers.
But why do I need to incur the operation cost on such checker fee?
So this is the entire system. That's a very good question, because firstly, you have this person sending money to this person, right? So we have A and B. Now, this is a very straightforward transaction. What we don't see behind is that we have a few problems, like how do you make sure that the amount is correct? How do you make sure that the accounting is correct? So,
recipient?
Yeah, the recipient is correct. There are a lot of these admin things going on. And sure, these admin things can be done by computers, right? So why do we need the humans to come in? Because the humans are these invoice checker. So when the more people check the invoice, the more people will verify that all these different things are correct. And when you have 100 million invoice checkers, you have 100 million invoice checkers checking the invoice. And then if 3 people cheat, you know that these 3 people are wrong. Then you're going to get the deposit from them, correct? And when you have like 100 million people doing the invoice checkers, it's very difficult for all 100 million people to cheat.
Okay. So this, if let's say there's a 100 million checker, so everybody had to put 100 million
Correct.
deposit. So the amount is very huge.
Yeah, I mean, this deposit is just, stop thinking about the amount itself.
Yeah, I'm saying that the amount for the tracker to deposit in is a huge amount.
Yeah, so this is one method, okay? This method, when you have to put deposit in, okay, let's put it back here. So when we look at consensus mechanism, we have the put deposit down system, right? This is called POS, proof of stake. This is the name of the mechanism, proof of stake. That means you have to put the deposit down, and then you can be the invoice checker, then you can check all these things. So this is one method. Yes, you're right. It's going to have a lot of money inside the pool, depending on how much. Because people who create this system, nobody has the formula that says the deposit will be 100 million, or the deposit will be $1, or the deposit will be $200. Nobody knows that, right? So it really depends on the system. How do you balance to make sure that you don't have too much amount of money inside? You don't have too much amount of money or too little money where people can cheat very easily. If it's $200, then I can flood the system with my machines. All I need to do is to get a lot of small little people to put $200 to put $200 to be the invoice checker, and then I can have, I can have 51 million times $200 for invoice for the deposit, and then I can override the system. Then I can put all the money to me. So how do you balance that? That's something that's very important. And so there's no right or wrong. It depends on what your use is, which is why all these different iOS, Android systems are different. Okay, so this is number one. And that's one mechanism. Then I'll just share one more mechanism with you just to understand a little bit more, which is the Bitcoin method. So the other thing is, so proof of stake is within the system, right? The other system is where I'm the invoice checker. So I need to check this. How do I check this? I need to have the machine to check it, right? Every day there's so many, every few minutes there's so many invoices being done. I can't print the invoice out, check it one by one. I need machines to do that. So these machines will be stuff like GPU, ASICs. These are like machines for the system
Transaction.
something like that. So I have a phone, then I can buy like special camera filters to put on the phone so I can take nicer pictures, or I can buy like headsets to connect to the phone so that the phone become better. So something like that. These are the accessories so that you can use the phone better. So these are the accessories for the layer one. So then they will help you to do the invoice checker. Now these things, they're expensive. Very expensive. Not only is this is fixed cost, right? How can I verify transactions? What do I use?
The amount?
Yeah, how do I run my computer? How do I run all these different things so that they could verify stuff? What's the main thing to allow all this digitization to exist?
So if let's say the software, you can cut down the manpower. So you can let the software run the verification for you.
Correct. What allows the software to run?
What allow? As long as there's a transaction.
Yeah. So if your phone is, how does the phone continue to run? Every day you have to do something to your phone, right? To make sure that there's enough battery to
Charge,
exist. Yeah, charge, right? What is this charge? What is powering the battery? When you charge your phone, what happens to the phone?
Charging.
What do you use to charge the phone?
My socket.
Yeah, what runs through the socket? It's electricity.
Electricity.
Correct. So electricity is the other variable cost to run the system, because you need electricity to run all these different GPU and ASICs.
Yes.
This is very expensive.
Electricity is very expensive.
Depending on where you are, but electricity can be very expensive. Why? Another thing. So electricity is expensive, right? And so sometimes some people use like solar power.
Yeah.
Correct? So that is kind of like cheaper. Not free, but cheaper.
Yes.
But what happens when you overuse your laptop, when you overuse your phone?
Hang.
Yeah, why? What do they do? What do they feel?
Hot.
Very hot, right? So you need to cool machines down, because this thing is also very expensive. Because when your invoice checker, which is all these different machines, you put a lot of electricity to them, they heat up very much, and then you can't do your invoice check. And then you waste, if you can't do any invoice check, you can't get any money, then all this cost becomes very expensive. So you need to find a place where it cools down the machine very quickly. So it could be, running cold water there, or putting it in a very cold place. So for example, the Arctic Circle, right now they're setting up all these kind of Bitcoin invoice checker, so that the place there is cold enough so the system can continuously run. So, I mean, that's one of the truths that I'm telling you. Yeah, because Iceland also has that, because Iceland is cold enough, so it doesn't heat up. To cool the machines down is very expensive. But if you do that, these kind of places where it's usually cold, you don't really have the sun. You can't really go and ask, you can't really get solar energy to power it. So now it depends. China has cheaper electricity, but China is very hot. You have to cool the machine down. Iceland is very cold, but you don't have a lot of sun, so you need to spend money on electricity. So it's, how do you balance this thing, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of cost involved in this aspect. So it's quite similar to the previous system where you have to put deposit down, because that's a cost.
Yeah.
This system is a different system where your cost is the machines, the cost of machines.
Fixed cost.
Yeah.
Operation cost.
So this system is work, right? If you think about it, I'm paying this cost because my machine is working. So there's a cost to this. So this mechanism is called proof of work. Because I'm paying money for the machines to work. So there is your other consensus mechanism. Because this thing is very expensive. For this to work is very expensive. So it makes it, when it becomes so expensive to do something, then it makes it less likely for people to want to cheat. Because it's very expensive.
Not worth
it, right? And this is to run one machine. If you have to run 100 million machines, it's going to be very expensive. It's not worth it to run so many machines and then crash the system. So this is one of the consensus mechanism. Okay? So number 2 is
proof of work.
Yeah. Pay money for machines to work. So this is called proof of work. So these are, in general, the 2 types of consensus mechanism. And then you can do like a combination of them. You can put some people put machine learning on there. Some people put a lot of different kind of consensus mechanism, but it's a mixture of all these kind of stuff in general. So this is consensus mechanism. Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is basically the technology behind the whole peer-to-peer payment, which is very important, because if the system is broken, then everything about Bitcoin and Ethereum, all this kind of stuff is pointless. Because one reason why we need all these consensus mechanism is to prevent double spending, which means if I have $10, right, a $10 note, I give it to you, and then I don't have it anymore. So in the physical world, it's easy to do that. We can see the $10 note from my wallet going to your wallet. But in the digital world, you can't see that. And what if I go and copy and paste the thing? I can copy it in computer. Copy paste is super easy, right? What if I copy and paste this $10? So I have $10, I give you $10, then I copy and paste $10 in my laptop again. Then I can give you $10 again. Then I copy paste $10 again. That's infinite money, right? Then money is pointless then. So this is the system there is no such thing as the $10 note anymore.
But if let's say you can copy and paste into me, your account is already -10. So you are going to copy and paste again and give it to me, you have a -20. So how can the account allow you to have a negative amount in the account?
So that is where the invoice checker comes in to make sure that, hey, you have -10. You have 0. So you cannot send $10 to someone else. I don't care what you copy and paste. Your account says that you have $0. I checked with all my other invoice checker. They all say $0. So you can't send any more money. That is how the system works. That's why invoice checkers are very important. These invoice checkers, we call them validators, because they validate the invoice.
So all this validator is actually just now the software.
This one? The application?
Yeah, the software application.
This one? This one?
Oh, sorry. the you did mention some is the software. These two.
Yeah.
So actually, the validator is actually these two machines.
Yeah. So they are kind of. So they are the tools to use. So this is the hammer, but the real person to put the shelf on up is not the hammer. I use the hammer to knock and put the bookshelf up.
So you're saying that you really need so many validator, like 100 million?
It depends on how many validators there are.
Oh.
Yeah, and then for them to approve, to check your invoice.
Okay.
So this is one type of system, which
is job creation.
Kind of like these things are machines, right? Yeah. So you just need one person to be running this, or you need people to be running this, but it's not one person running one GPU, one person running one A6. It could be, so there's something that they call like a mining farm. So there's two big ones in China where they have a lot of little computers like this, small ones. All they do is to be checking invoice all the time. Yeah, and then people run that, and then it's very expensive with all the electricity. That's a whole separate topic. But this is very important because it brings us to the second thing. One of the difference is transaction speed and security. This is very secure, right? If you have 100 million people checking invoices, then that's very good, because for you to be a cheater, for you to cheat, then you need to have 51 million of them. That's a lot of people and a lot of money. You want to bribe so many people, quite expensive, right?
Not worth.
Yeah, not worth it. So this is secure. But the other thing, security is one thing. The other thing is transaction speed. Imagine these 100 million people, maybe the system is not always up, or maybe they only run when they're awake, or there are a lot of problems with that. So it takes very long to
validate one transaction.
Correct. So secure is good. Transaction speed is bad. So what do they do? So you have other kind of consensus mechanism where this is a trade-off, right? Do you want speed, or do you want security? Yes, we want both, but maybe in total there's 100%. You can do 50% speed, 50% security, or you can do 90% security, 10% speed. This is Bitcoin, by the way. It's safe, but it takes 10 minutes to make any transaction. It's not fast, but it's very secure. Or it could be, if I'm like doing 90% speed, 10% security. So it depends on what are their trade-offs. So remember just now I say that there's this other thing called layer 2. We don't want to talk about it first.
So you don't complicate the explanation.
Correct. So one of the reasons layer 2 exists is to deal with speed. Because honestly, if we look at speed versus security, I would say security is number one priority. If you don't have security, you have the fastest things in the world. What's the point, right? It's secure first. So layer 1, you solve the security problem. Layer 2 is where you have other kind of technology to help with the speed. So we don't talk about this first because this combines the application layer and layer 1 together, and it's slightly different, but it makes it complicated. But basically layer 2 usually deal with speed. And then there are a lot of technology behind how do you deal with speed. You have like sharding, you have roll-ups, and then in roll-ups you have like ZK roll-up, you have optimistic roll-up. You have different type of technology to deal with speed. And this is where the layer 2 comes in to deal with that, which they also have their own tokens, so also investable kind of thing. Yeah, that's why it's very important for you to understand these different layers, different types of tokens, different kind of purposes. And why we want to understand the purposes is because if there is demand for it, the token price would probably be appreciating. And if there is no demand for it, then yeah, so what if everyone keeps saying that the coin is going to rise, the coin is going to rise? The coin is going to rise only for a short while. But there are real projects that, really help to solve problems, and they're going to be quite valuable for a long time. And that's why I want to teach you the differences. Okay? So transaction speed and security, it depends on the use case. So transaction speed and security. So this is usually layer 2, security is layer 1, and then you have your own tokens for each of the project. And then
this token is the expenses or the payout on running this. This token means.
So these tokens are every of the system has every of this little system they all have their own tokens, their own internal currency, right? Because in Bitcoin, you use Bitcoin to pay for transaction fees. You use Ethereum, you use Ether on Ethereum to pay for transaction fees. You use all these different things to pay for transaction fees within the ecosystem, right? And so that's where the tokens is. It's the cost, your payout, the paying thing, and then when you get your returns. So when you have the proof of stake and proof of work thing, when you put your deposit or you spend money on it, you get transaction fees in return as invoice checker, right? And this money is in the tokens, is in that specific tokens.
So this is a reward for the validator to earn for the work.
Correct. So what layer 1 is better than the other, it really depends on the use case, right? Maybe your transaction is, you want very, very fast transaction, and you don't have to care so much about security because it's a very simple, all transactions are going to be very simple. It's me pay you or you pay me. So you don't have to think so much about security because you don't have to check so many things. Then maybe transaction speed becomes more important because I want fast payment. So that is where you want to focus a bit more on transaction speed, and the security is important, but you don't have to, your security,
prioritize it.
Yeah, you don't have to check so many different things, which is a bit faster. So for layer 1, it depends on what your use case is.
So can I know how to be a validator in the real life?
So again, it depends on one of these different layer 1 systems, right? So for Bitcoin, you can buy the GPU A6 thing. This one. Then you can, in the past, you can just run it on your laptop. And so in the past, some people, when they are in university, they have a small software that runs on the laptop. It takes up a lot of energy, but the electricity is free because they have a student hostel. And the student hostel also has air conditioning, right? So it's fine. The laptop can work. So they can earn a little bit of Bitcoins, for example. So this is how they can be a validator for the invoice checker for Bitcoin.
So you're saying that anyone can just download this?
Oh, these things are physical stuff. Like these are small computers. But you can also download stuff on your laptop, like a software, to do something similar. These two stuff, they focus on one thing only. So a computer is good because they can do a lot of different things, right? It's not a specialization of anything, they can do everything. But this one, they specialize in one specific stuff.
Validate invoice.
Yeah.
So there's like 24 hours running and running and running.
Yeah. Expensive to buy them. It is very expensive to buy them.
The software or
the hardware. These are hardware. These are the small little computers. And because they're very good at doing one thing. So who else buys them? Those people who play computer games. Because the laptop is not good enough to be playing computer games, right? So they usually buy this kind of stuff to make the computer go faster as well. Okay. So that then, actually this entire Bitcoin thing is doing quite badly for these people who play computer games, because now it's very expensive to buy this to play their computer games. So so these small little computers, they have use case outside of crypto anyway. Yeah, that's That's my point. So you can be a Bitcoin validator where you buy this kind of stuff, or you can run something on your laptop, but it will slow down other stuff. So you can buy this, let it run, and the faster you run, the better it is, because the faster you run, the better you can be the invoice checker. Then you can get your Bitcoin rewards. Yeah. There's a whole different dimension to this system as well. It's first come, first serve. The first person who validates the invoice gets the reward.
Oh, so that means only the first one get the reward. Then subsequently, first validator?
You don't get the reward. So you always need to keep investing in the best one. So you're faster and faster and faster and faster to get the reward.
Oh, that is very stressful. So
yeah, stressful for the machine. And then there's also how difficult, because that fast is one thing. The other thing is also the speed to validate, to check the invoice is one thing, right? The other thing is how do you check the invoice? The back end of this thing.
Checklist.
So usually you have a checklist. For the computers, they don't have a checklist. For the computers, they actually are solving very complicated mathematical problems. And so the system can change how complex the math problem is, which is how complicated you have to check the invoice. So if there's less people being invoice checker, so they make it more difficult to be checking. They make the list more complicated to check the invoice. But that's a separate topic. So one way to become a Bitcoin validator is that you buy all these different things, you run Bitcoin, and you let it compete to be the invoice checker, and then you get Bitcoin in returns.
I'm sorry, I just sidetrack a bit.
Correct.
If you are saying that you have 100 million tracker, then why only the most faster tracker, validate, then the rest are not valid?
Yeah. So let's say for Bitcoin itself, every 10 minutes you have one transaction. So every 10 minutes, one person will win this Bitcoin.
So that means you have to beat 100 millions of the tracker worldwide.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. which is it's slow, but it's a bit more secure as well.
But it's very repeat.
Yeah. So the other
action.
And the other way is let's say Ethereum, where if you're the invoice checker and then you want to check this, you don't have the 10 minutes thing. They don't have the limit for that, because it's a different system, like Android, right? Android is different from iOS. Concept is similar, but the execution is different. So for that, every time you check the invoice, you will get the ETH, which is the token, plus the transaction fee. Bitcoin also has similar stuff. You get the Bitcoin plus the transaction fee. And so the transaction fee is sometimes when a lot of people, so this is the concept, right? So if I am sending money to you, and then let's say someone else, then I have to pay transaction fees. But let's say this is a time where a lot of people want to be sending money. Maybe it's Christmas time or Chinese New Year time. So everyone is sending money to people, and then suddenly there's a lot of transactions happening. So one thing that these invoice checkers can do is, okay, I am an invoice checker. I would need to check your invoices, right? But I want to see who will pay me the most, because this is fixed, but this transaction fee is variable. I can choose how much I want to pay. There's no fixed amount of transaction fees.
Just like tips like that?
Something like tips, correct. So if you give me more tips, I validate your transaction first.
Faster.
Yes. So this is a different mechanism from Ethereum and Bitcoin, because I can increase my transaction fees and it can be faster because they will prioritize it. With Bitcoin, it's the fastest time is 10 minutes. With Ethereum, you pay more tips, which is transaction fees, then you get it faster. So with Ethereum, right now they have moved to a new version called the ETH v2. And so remember the system where I say you put deposit down and then you can do that? So they are moving to this. So you have to put, I don't know how many ETH inside to become one of these checkers. And then the system will be, then you run the system to be checking. So that is the number 2. Now we go to number 3, which is network effects, which is one of the key concepts.
Okay.
So network effects is very important. Okay? Because let's look at WhatsApp. I use WhatsApp less and less now. Because WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. When you use WhatsApp, you have to agree to the terms saying that all your data will be given to Facebook and Facebook can use your data anyhow. Okay? So that is the situation for WhatsApp. I use WhatsApp less now. What do? I use other apps instead. So there's this app called Telegram. There's this app called Signal. There's this app called Discord. There's this app called Slack. Or email. I have other apps to use to connect with my friends and to talk about work stuff, right? But WhatsApp, I still need to be on WhatsApp because there are some people that only exist on WhatsApp and I have to talk to them via WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is valuable because people use it.
Common recognized.
Yeah. So a telephone is only valuable if I can call someone, right? If we don't have a home telephone, then, we have a home telephone, but nobody else has telephone, then there's nobody to call. Or if I have the Signal app, there's only 5 people on my Signal app. And that means I can't use this as my dominant app
default.
because nobody's on there. So WhatsApp is valuable because there are people on there. So it can connect people. So it's like you can connect with me, can connect with everyone because we have the app in common and everyone can connect with everyone, right? So that is valuable. And then I'm moving to all these different other apps, but not everyone is on that. So I know they're valuable because the intrinsic value, the real value is that they are secure. But the extrinsic value, the real world value is that nobody's using them. So that sucks. Yeah. So this is what we call network effects. Because this is a network and the more people use it, the more valuable it becomes. So this is one of the things that is very important in understanding crypto in general. But let's look at layer 1 first. Because the more people use it, the more invoice checkers, the more people use it, the more invoice you're going to send, the more invoice checkers you're going to need, the more demand of the token, because every time you send invoice, you have to pay in token. And the ecosystem just grows, right? So this is where it becomes very important. So if you want to choose how to use, which of this layer 1 to use, you have to see who is on there, how many people on there, how many transactions are being validated, how many validators, how often are tokens being issued, kind of stuff. So, yeah, 3
Network
effects is where it's valuable because people are using it. So this is this is a very good question. Which layer 1 should you choose? There are a lot. These are just 3 different things. And what do they do? Any of the day is just economics. As simple as it is just economics. Everything in life is just economics. And this is where you determine the demand of it, which is economics. When you have very good way of agreeing the consensus mechanism, depending on your system, then you have more demand for it. So maybe putting money down, you have to put the tokens down, right? Or putting deposit down is putting the tokens down, or putting money for the machines to work. You have different types of approval for the system. The more secure it is, or the faster it is, there's more demand for it. And then when more and more people are using it, there's also more demand for it. So as demand increases, in general, the token increases if the supply is the same, right?
I should say the value of the token.
Value, correct. Value increases. If the supply is the same, then demand increase, value of token increases. So this is layer 1. Okay?
Agreed.
So if we do a quick look at the different layers again, I think this is better. This one. So we have layer 1, which is your Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then we have talked about this. So you can invest in one of them, and in general, people need these tokens because you pay transaction fees in them. If you don't have this token, you can't pay transaction fees.
So how you had to earn from it, right?
You can earn, you can buy. We go into the laptop later to see how to get them. Okay, so you can. So the way to get them, you can buy, you can
Earn?
You can earn. How do you earn? You earn via being the validator, the invoice checker.
But before you be the tracker, you had to spend money to buy the tool software.
Yeah. So it's not cheap to be a tracker. But at the same time, if you don't make people spend money first, then you have bad people coming in to become a checker. They're not going to check properly, right? Because you put investment down, then you want to do things better. It's like a psychological thing.
So if you're free, people will do fancy. So at least everybody play a part on their own asset ownership.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why you have to pay for it. So you can buy the Bitcoin, Ethereum. You can earn via being a validator, or your salary, or receive. You receive Bitcoin and Ethereum. Yeah, so I was paid in Bitcoin and Ethereum like a few times before. So that's how you can get it. Yeah, these are the 3 main ways. And if you are institutional investor, let's say, now there are a lot of companies listed in the stock exchange, these big companies, right? They want to buy Bitcoin. They are not going to go into one of the... So you buy it via your exchange, right?
Like a share.
Something like a share. But these exchange are crypto exchange. Yeah, so we're going to use that later. So that's how you get it, or you go and earn, or you receive them. So can you imagine, for example, one of these... so there's a company called Square. There's a company called MicroStrategy. They are listed on the stock market. And can you imagine, they tell their workers, hi everyone, today we're going to become the invoice checker. Everyone will be a validator. You have to go and buy all these machines. It doesn't make sense for a company to do that. They will also they invest a lot of money in Bitcoin. Nobody is going to pay them. I think they have like more than 10,000 Bitcoins. Yeah, I think they have
10,000
I think they have 14,000 something Bitcoins at least. And then they raised more money recently to buy more Bitcoins. So they need to buy. Nobody's going to, even if anyone gives them Bitcoin, nobody's going to give them so many Bitcoins, right? The most is like, oh, you're my friend. Okay, I'll give you 0.001 Bitcoin, something like that. So they don't have this system. They're not going to tell the company, guys, we're shifting to become the invoice checker to be a validator. They also can't buy on exchange as well. They can't buy on crypto exchange because crypto exchanges, they're not licensed. As in, because they in general, there are a lot of regulation issues because regulators are still figuring out this thing, and the regulators are not giving the license to all these crypto exchange. But you can buy from regulated exchange. So this would be stuff like, so there are a few companies that does that. You can buy from regulated exchange where it could be OTC, or it could be one of these like stock market, like a stock. The only thing is that you have to pay
a lot of money.
But still, this is the best way for big companies to get Bitcoin
instantly.
instantly and in a regulated way. Because this is not regulated. Nobody's going to give you so much money. And to earn, you need to take some time. You need to spend so much money anyway. You might as well buy from a regulated place. So these are the options. Later, we're going to go into the crypto exchange because this is expensive. But this is for institutional people. We're not institutional people. So that's the thing. So we've already covered layer 1. Now we go to the application layer. Before we go there, do you have any questions?
I don't know what I don't know yet, but at least I have some interesting concept because I didn't know that really. I know that we can earn or you can do some transaction, but I didn't know that it's involved with so much of layer of explore or opportunity. Yeah, it's a very new and I should say technology that we have to learn and explore for more.